Welcome
Alright.
everybody to our three-dimensional fabric flowers class with Jessie Agnew. My name is Dana. I am the editor of Fave Crafts and I'll be emceeing today's class. And if you're not familiar with Fave Crafts, we are a website that shares free craft tutorials from all over the internet. We have a variety of free email newsletters broken down by interests like Everyday Crochet, Trash to Treasure, Faithfully Homemade, which Jessie's work is featured in often, and several other newsletters. And you can sign up for any of our free newsletters at favecrafts.com. A few housekeeping items. We're recording the class right now, and we're going to be emailing out that recording tomorrow. It'll also be on YouTube and on our website, so just keep an eye on your email for the copy of that recording. And then you can use the Q&A feature or the chat to ask questions, and we'll try to answer them as they come in. And that's all I have to say for housekeeping. I'd love to introduce Jessie. So Jessie and her blog, I Am So Crazy, are sponsoring today's class. And Jessie Agnew is a mixed media artist, pattern maker, seamstress, costumer, and fashion designer. She runs IamSoCrazy.com, a website that features tutorials and patterns for a wide range of sewing and craft projects, and is dedicated to helping people bring their own creative dreams to life. Jessie incorporates many natural materials into her work and employs a wide variety of techniques, including metalwork, painting, LED lighting, weaving, and melting/burning fabrics. She is heavily into upcycling and reducing waste and loves to restyle old garments into something completely new. Check out IamSoCrazy.com for tutorials, patterns, and inspiration for your own projects. And I will put that link in the chat. Welcome, Jessie.
Hello, welcome to you and everybody watching. So I have a really fun project that's very versatile. It's great to attach to tote bags or sandals. You can make a lapel pin out of it. I really like making hair clips out of them. So a lot of times when someone brings me a formal dress to hem that's too long, I will use the scraps from the hem to make one of these flowers. And it doesn't need much fabric. So usually if a dress needs hemming, you're going to have enough left over to make a flower, and it'll match the dress and really kind of elevate the outfit into something that's super special. And the fabric selection, you don't need a large piece of fabric. So if you have scraps left over, I really like using something with a little bit of shimmer to it, because flower petals in real life kind of shimmer and shine a little bit. But the fabric selection is up to you. I'd say if you have a piece of fabric you want to use, just go for it and see if you like the results. But I have kind of a recommended type of fabric that might give you the best results for a beginner. So you're going to start, I'm going to talk about fabric selection in a minute, but you're going to start by putting your fabric wrong side up. And this fabric has kind of a shine to it, and I'm going to use the lighter side, but it's up to you, whichever side you prefer. So you put your fabric wrong side up, and then you're going to take a piece of heat and bond. And heat and bond has like a nubby side to it that's textured, and then it has a smooth side to it. So put the smooth side up and set it down. And you're going to have your iron set to the silk setting. So that gives you a clue that whatever fabric you use needs to be able to withstand being ironed on the silk setting. But you're going to flatten out your heat and bond and just stick it down about 2 seconds in each spot, and double check to make sure you have the smooth side up, or else you will just glue the heat and bond to your iron, and nobody needs that. So get it kind of stuck down all over. And let it cool for just a minute. And it has a paper backing that after it's cool, you're going to be able to peel that off. So look at that. You don't need the paper anymore. And then fold the fabric over. And then come back with your iron dry iron, silk setting, no steam, and this time press it for about 10 seconds in each spot. And move your iron around just a little bit because you don't want to be able to see the holes from your sole plate. So if you leave the iron in one spot, you're going to have little bumps from the holes in your iron. And you can check it before you start cutting your petals out and make sure that everything is stuck down. And once the material is bonded like this, you don't need to worry about the edges fraying. So now you should have one piece of stiffer material because it's 2 layers and it's got the heat and bond in the middle. And just kind of double check, make sure everything is stuck down. And after it's cool, you're going to want to give it just a second. Then you get your template. And this shape right here for the petals, we're going to be cutting 14 total of those. And if you have a Cricut machine, go for it. I always use scissors, but that is completely up to you. So while I'm cutting, I want to talk about the fabric selection. I have used knits and wovens. I prefer wovens. If it's a thick knit fabric, it'll be okay, but it won't hold its shape quite as well as a woven fabric will. So when someone brings me a prom dress that's made of knit, you can use it. It's just that if you're selecting fabric for a flower specifically, I would aim toward about a medium weight woven. So if the fabric is super thin and gauzy, you won't be able to use it because the heat and bond will kind of sneak through those little holes in the fabric, like between the threads. And then it'll stick to your table, it'll stick to your iron. You might even be able to see it a little bit. The fabric will kind of look darker where the heat and bond is. So if you notice that happening, you are using a fabric that is too thin. So try to get one that's maybe a little bit thicker than a satin is ideal, but I've used satin in the past and it does okay.
Jessie, we have somebody, Judy is asking, is heat and bond the same as Wonder Under?
That is a good question. Heat and bond, it is made by, let's see. You know, I think that is the brand name. I always just call it heat and bond, and I use the Ultra Hold. If you have a double-sided fusible web that's labeled heavy duty or maybe craft weight, that should work also. I use heat and bond because I trust it and it keeps its shape well with a curling iron. So we're going to shape it at the end with a curling iron. And I know that heat and bond responds really well to that and holds its shape. So that is one reason I recommend heat and bond. But the flowers are so quick to make. I can make one in well under an hour. So if you have something that you want to try, I would say go for it. Just have fun, use a scrap of fabric, and see what you think of the results.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And the fabric selection, you'll see on the template that we do need one other piece of fabric, and it's just a circle for the center. And I recommend either a lace or you can use kind of a sturdy tulle, but you may decide to use a couple different layers at the same time if your fabric is too thin, too fragile. Like if it's a really wispy tulle, you're going to want to double it up or fold it so that it has a little bit of strength to it. You want it to withstand having beads stitched to it or glued to it, if that's what you decide to do.
Jessie, while you cut petals, can you tell
Mhm.
everybody just like a little bit more about your background as a fashion designer and as a sewist?
Well, I apparently came out of the womb knowing how to work with fabric. I don't know how that works, but when I was about 12, I asked my mom, "Hey, can I use your sewing machine?" And she's like, "Sure." And I just started making things. I eventually ran that sewing machine into the ground, but I really like working with offbeat materials. I've used carbon fiber, Kevlar. I've used old vinyl records, electrical wire. I use whatever I can find that's going to be thrown away. And I started eventually getting invited to fashion shows. I've had people ask me to make their wedding dresses. It kind of blew up a little bit, but it is what I love to do. And I still have a day job right now, but maybe someday I will be a full-time designer.
Very
I think
cool.
my biggest passion is teaching other people how to make designs that they've imagined, because I think that's the best reason to sew, because you can make something that's one of a kind. You can't find it in a store. So I really like teaching other people how to do that. So you're also going to need a hand needle and thread. And I'm going to use white thread so you can see it, but you would use thread that matches your fabric. And it's a really good idea to run your thread through a little bit of beeswax. You don't need to, but it keeps it smoother and a little bit easier to work with. In a pinch, you can use lip balm. So there's a secret sewing hack for you. Okay. So the petals, we're going to tack them together, kind of overlapping so that the bottoms of the petals are about as far away as the bottom of another petal. So we're going to start right here where these two meet. And you don't need to worry about being super precise. It'll be okay if they're a little bit crooked, because you'll see later we're going to shape them. And again, you would be using matching thread. So I'm going to tie my thread off. You can use whatever knot you prefer. I tend to use something called a surgeon's knot, which is going to be a little bit hard for me to do reaching around a tripod here. But you wrap it under once and then twice and pull it tight. And then take the short ends, wrap them under once the other way, and pull it tight. So the petals, you're going to want to make sure that they're all overlapping the same way. So when you have this one under, the next one is going to go under that one. So start tacking them together, and you're going to go down into the next petal, and then up through the previous petal, and down once, and then back up about where your next petal is going to join, like that. And don't tack them too well. Don't like seal them all together, because you'll see you want them to bend like this. That's how we're going to get a really nice shape on our finished flower. So we're going to go down, back up into the previous petal, and then down, and back up where we'll add our next petal. And people have asked if you can use a sewing machine. The short answer is no. You're not really supposed to sew through heat and bond. You can get adhesive on your needle. And I think that hand sewing, at least for your first flower, is a better way to kind of keep everything under control and get a better feel for the process. But I have sewn through heat and bond on a machine, and I have been happy with the results. Technically, that's not allowed, but no one's watching, so you do you.
Had instructors in the past who were asked certain questions that and they responded, uh-oh, are the fabric police gonna get me? I don't want to say the wrong thing.
The fabric police are real, but you're allowed to ignore them.
You can't get arrested by the fabric police, I don't think.
That's true. I probably would have been by now. I actually have a project on my blog I posted not too long ago. It was a carbon fiber wallet, and I used heat and bond, and I sewed it on a machine. Everybody lived. Nothing blew up. So you definitely can. Since for this project, we just want to tack them here and there, I really feel like it's not a good fit for a sewing machine. But if you have arthritis, or if you have a reason why you want to use a sewing machine, it's perfectly fine to give that a shot. I probably would discard the needle when you're done, just because the adhesive is going to get on it a little bit. And we are most of the way there. You can see you want to sew them together pretty much where the two petals meet at the bottom, maybe a little bit above that, but use a kind of loose stitch because you do want them to move around. I know it looks like it's floppy and out of control, but that's what's going to let us shape the final flower. And the 14 petals number, that's kind of up to you too. So if you would like a very full flower, you can add more petals, you can remove them, you can scale the template up and down so you can have a bigger flower. I had one bridesmaid ask for a whole bouquet of teeny tiny flowers, and I attached them to bobby pins. So she had like a little bitty bouquet in her hair. So they're quite versatile. You can make the petals more pointy if you'd like. You can emulate your favorite flower. Just change the shape of the petals a little bit. Some trial and error. Honestly, as long as the petals are symmetrical and they match each other, it's going to look great. Well, this is our last petal. I got a thread monster going. Okay. So we're not going to cut our thread yet. We're just going to leave it hanging out, doing its thing. And here is our little chain of petals. And then you're going to take your other piece of fabric, which I've chosen a lace, but something kind of wispy is going to work best, really. And then just put it on your hand like that and give it a good poke. So you want it to be a little bit of a cone shape, and you'll be able to trim this later. So don't worry too much about how it looks, but you're going to end up with this little tuft right here. So now you're going to lay down the petals that you did and make sure that they're overlapping away from the direction you're sewing them. So this petal is going to fully meet. You're not going to sew it this way. You're going to sew it this way with the petal flat up against the little cone shape. And the very bottom is going to get kind of messy, but that's okay. The bottom is the part that does not matter. So we're going to go down and back up. And now turn it. And then next petal, you're going to go down through the cone. And then back up through the cone. And again, this is where less is more. If you attach them too firmly, you're not going to be able to shape your flower as easily. So now we have the next petal down, and I'm not going all the way through the petal at the back here. I'm just going through the bottom of the cone. And as you turn it, you're going to be adding new petals over old petals. But you're still going to be going through the bottom like this.
Are you able to hold the flower a little closer to the camera? Someone's asking if you can zoom in.
Okay, how's that?
Looks good.
Okay. And if you find that it's difficult, you can certainly use a thimble. I tend to use little silicone finger grips if I feel like I need something extra. They just kind of slide on like a little itty bitty glove. But they're mostly to help you pull the needle and grip it. They don't really help you push. I'm gonna have to join on a new piece of thread here, but that is all right. It hits that donut hole between when you start with a really long piece of thread and it gets, all crazy and hard to work with. But if you start with a piece that's too short, you're gonna have to join on a new one. I'm going to demonstrate that surgeon's knot again in case anybody missed it. You wrap it down twice. So under once, and then under again. And then the same thread tail goes under the other way. Other side once. And we can just cut that off. Back down through the petal and through the center of that cone. And this is where the flower is going to look a little bit messy and floppy, and you're going to think you messed up. You didn't, you're fine. Got another thread monster. Now here's something to look out for. This petal right here, you want to make sure they're all folded correctly towards the center. You don't want to get them bent backwards. All right, that is our last petal. And for right now, we're going to leave the needle just hanging out again and doing its thing. And we're going to talk about the center a little bit. So the center is kind of whatever you would like for it to be. I've put beads on them. This is an old earring. You could glue it down. I actually have pins that I use sometimes, like this one here. So they have this little backing, and then the spear, I don't know what you actually call it, but if you put that down through the flower, you'll be able to put the pin back on it. And you can actually use that to attach the flower to a tote bag or something. You can also use a safety pin. You can use one of these pinbacks. So you could turn it into a lapel pin. You have a ton of options. I love using these hair clips, little spring-powered ones, or little alligator clips. This is what I used on the bridle fascinator just to make sure it wouldn't show. You can use a comb. And you can also sew it directly to a tote bag or a pair of sandals or whatever you like. But that is completely up to you. And a lot of times I'll stitch beads to the lace part, or I will use something that's a little bit blingy, like an old brooch or a broken earring. And now that's why I left the thread tail, because you would be sewing on one of these, probably sewing on one of these pinbacks or hair clips or something like that. I'm going to leave it open-ended for the demonstration. Dana, do you think I need to demonstrate sewing on a pinback? You would just be going through these holes here and tacking it.
There's time. If then I'm sure folks would be interested in seeing it demonstrated, but if there's not time, then it can be glossed over.
Okay. Well, let me move on to shaping it then, just to make sure we have plenty of time for that. So you want to trim the lace until it looks like whatever you are envisioning. So usually I'll slice it a little bit, cut it a little bit shorter. I prefer to have the petals peeking out, so that's up to you. And then trim off however much suits you. You can leave it long if you want. You can do anything that floats your boat. Usually I trim it to something about like that. And now I'm going to grab my curling iron. So since there's heat and bond in here, if we use a curling iron and we heat it up and we hold it to a certain shape, it will keep that shape as it's cool. So for the center petals, I'm pinching them in the curling iron. I sort of push them towards the middle and then hold it for a second to let it cool off with just the tip of the curling iron. And however it is when it cools, it will want to keep that shape. So one at a time, go around and grab each petal, making sure I just have one petal there. Push it in towards the middle. And Dana, this is probably a good intermission if you have anything you'd like to add.
Okay, awesome. I am going to pull up the presentation again and talk a bit about upcoming classes and our a magazine offer that we share to anybody who attends. So our upcoming class series in August into September is going to be all knitting. So we've got Intro to Steeking, the Falling into Autumn Knit Headband. That tutorial, that class is coming up in August, Tuesday, August 13th. That is with Molly Conroy from the Hands-On Knitting Center. If you guys have attended her classes in the past, she's very talented, very thorough. And if you're not familiar with what steeking is, because I wasn't, you're
I'm not.
knitting. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. You knit in the round and then you cut the knitting so that you can create like a cardigan, for example, or in this case with the headband, you are cutting it so that you can add a tie so that you can adjust the size or the tension of the headband when you're wearing it. Fascinating. I think that sounds terrifying, but Molly is very talented and she's going to walk everybody through it. And so the headband class in August is prepping everybody for the sweater class. The headband class is free. The sweater is a paid class series over the course of 3 weeks. There's a break in there for Labor Day, so it's 3 classes over 4 weeks, actually. And you will get to meet and get like FaceTime with Molly because it'll be set up like a Zoom meeting and you guys are going to make the sweater together. So the headband serves as your like gauge swatch and practice for the motif that you're doing in the sweater. And then if you love this design, I think it's so pretty, you can make a whole sweater using this design. So anyway, all of that said, we have the sign up link for the free class available and I will drop that in the chat. The paid class series, the sign up link is coming. It's not available yet, but it will be soon. So, and especially it'll definitely be available once you tune in to the free class. So if you're subscribed to our Eventbrite page, you'll get those notifications when those class sign up pages are available. But you can sign up for the headband class, see what it's all about, see how you feel about doing color work in the round and then steeking the headband. And that's again with Molly Conroy on August 13th.
That's really pretty. I like the leaves.
Isn't it so cool? I'm so impressed. Like she's so talented. I mean, everybody we work with is so talented, but yeah, she designed the sweater. So yay. Okay. So, and then this is a special offer we we offer to everybody who attends our classes, which is if you are a new subscriber and you haven't signed up before to We Like Sewing digital magazine, folks can get a $5 annual subscription with the welikesewing.com/virtual24 coupon code. So what is We Like Sewing? It's a digital magazine. It's entirely digital of beautiful sewing patterns, professionally edited, professionally designed. And there are 6 issues that are released every year. And you get access, because it's digital, you get access to all of the previously published patterns and designs as soon as you sign up for the newsletter. We Like Sewing has been around 5-ish years. It's been around for a bit, so you've got like probably a couple hundred beautiful sewing patterns in the archives at this point, including Jessie has contributed to We Like Sewing in the past. I think I saw it. Jessie, you have a cover image with We Like Sewing. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, my leather purse that was made out of a leather coat was on the cover of one of the issues. And I love upcycling, and I love that We Like Sewing includes that and lets me work with whatever random stuff I find and want to rescue from Goodwill.
Very good. Oh, awesome. I'm gonna find that link, and I'm gonna see if I can find that link and put it in the chat so folks can see the bag, because yeah, I stumbled across that the other day. I thought it was so cool and so pretty. Anyway, so if you love what you're learning from Jessie today, want to explore more of her work, and you want a beautiful digital magazine of sewing patterns, you can sign up for We Like Sewing at welikesewing.com/virtual24 for $5 US. You get that annual subscription. All right, that's enough from me. Jessie, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, well, I've just been paying attention over here. I really like the idea of a useful swatch for that cardigan, that you're making a headband instead of just making a swatch and then not knowing what to do with it. So the flower, I'm just continuing. I didn't actually do any shaping off camera. I was just listening to what Dana was saying over there. But the central petals, I'm pushing them a little bit more towards the center. And then that's the 3 in the middle. So I'm going to grab one of the outside ones and I'll push it a little bit towards the center, maybe not so much, and roll the tip of it down. And then give it a little bit of a press with the tip here so it doesn't flop while it's still warm. And then it'll keep its little curl there. So I'll go around and grab this one next. And one great thing about these flowers is that they can be reshaped. The heat and bond in there will always respond to being warmed back up. So in case your niece or nephew sits on it, you can come back in and plump it up again, reshape it. I actually make sure my clients don't leave them in a hot car for that reason. If it's for a formal event, like a wedding, I make sure they don't leave them in the hot car, just because when I'm done shaping them, I don't want anything to happen to them to make them look flumpy on the wedding day, if that's a word. And you can see they're not stiff exactly. They're a little bit springy. So that makes it really nice to work with because they do hold their shape. If you find that your flower is not holding its shape, that may happen if you use a wispy fabric, one that's very thin, or a knit fabric isn't going to be quite as good at holding its shape. This is, I think, the fun part. So you can play with this shape and fiddle with it as long as you want. Make sure it looks exactly how you want it. The outer petals, I tend to just roll down the edge because most flower petals in nature are not perfectly flat. They do have a little bit of a curve to them. And you can see it looks a lot more realistic as I'm going around and shaping it. So the shimmery fabric that I'm using, it's a synthetic. It was actually a tablecloth. You can tell I love to upcycle. But if you have a fabric that is a little bit more flat and doesn't have that glimmer that you want, you can add paint on there or a top coat. This is actually an extra petal from the bridal fascinator. So it started out as satin, and I have added a pearlized white acrylic paint and then an acrylic top coat that was called Enchanted Shimmer. And that was because the wedding dress that this is made from, it's made from the bride's mother's wedding dress. And the dress itself wasn't quite as glimmery as I wanted it to be, or the bride wanted it to be. So I've added an acrylic shimmer on there. You do want to do a test if you're going to be adding paint or top coat to the petals to make sure that it can hold up to the heat of the curling iron and the clothes iron when you apply the heat and bond. So be careful of that. You may want to paint it last thing. You can paint it after it's been assembled and shaped. It's a little bit more difficult, but you can do it. And I have one petal I'm not happy with. I grab my curling iron again. You can also hold it with your fingers while it cools. You need a little extra help there. Okay. So the reason I have left the thread tail on there is because that is how I would sew on the pinback if I was using one of those, or the hair clip, or whatever I'm going to attach it to. But the center, I think it always needs some decoration. So this is a broken earring. I'm just gonna push it through right in the center, and I would add some glue on there. But the actual earring stud is going right through the flower, and it's pretty secure just that way, but I would definitely add some glue. And Dana, do we have time to sew on a pinback?
Yeah, we've got 15 minutes, so plenty of time.
Oh, wow. All right, then. We'll turn it into a lapel pin. So this is where the back of the flower isn't really going to show, so you don't need to be as worried about how your stitches look. Again, you would be using matching thread. I never use white thread or thread that contrasts like this when I'm actually sewing a finished project and not as a demonstration. So you would just take a little stitch through the back of the petals and then through the pin back. Sometimes I open them up to make it easier. Sometimes it makes it easier to stick yourself. So that's up to you. That's up to you and how brave you're feeling. There we go. So easier to sew through, easier to hurt yourself. I've used a button for the center of the flower sometimes. It all depends on what suits your look and what you have on hand. I love using what I've already got. In the bride's case, we actually used blue beads because she was doing the something old, something new, something borrowed, and the something blue was her little beads in the middle. You can also just use a safety pin on the back if you want to. It'll save you a little bit of sewing. And the idea is that nobody really sees the back. So a safety pin would be just fine. But you can find all kinds of hardware like this at any craft store or online. You can find pinbacks and the hair clips, or you can reuse a hair clip you already have if it's not to your taste. You can just take whatever embellishment off of the hair clip and put something entirely new on there. Make it match your outfit. Okay, so that is nice and secure. I'm gonna run my needle under the pinback so that I can get back to my thread tails. Use my little gripper. And use your knot of choice. I'm going for the surgeon's knot again. It seems like one of those knots that just does not let me down. And now we are all through with the needle. And since I wasn't sure we'd have enough time, and I sewed the pin back on after I shaped it, I'm gonna go back through and make sure I haven't smashed anything here. I think we look pretty good. So there is our finished flower. It's pinned back, and it would have purple thread if you were making it not as a demonstration. But there we go. It has some glimmer, some shimmer, and the petals are all three-dimensional. You can see they're raised and curled. And you can give it more curl if that's your taste. You can push the petals up higher. That's really up to you. I think that's one of the great things about the project, that it is very customizable. You get to pick the color, the shape. You can make the petals a little bit pointier. That is up to you.
Okay, Kay is asking, what weight of thread are you using and is it doubled?
I was using a doubled all-purpose, so a 40 weight. Use something that's fairly even. You don't want a lot of lumps and bumps and fuzzy parts. So your preferred brand, and I was using a solid polyester, but it was doubled. It was doubled for every step. Good catch, Kay. I didn't mention that, but yes, it was doubled. I find that a thicker weight of thread, it's okay, but it is a little bit harder to get it through this bonded material because the heat and bond does have a little bit of grip. So it may put some friction on your thread. If it's a much thicker thread, then it's going to put more friction on it.
Question I see that we hadn't addressed already. If folks have any other questions in the next minute or two, feel free to drop them in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and share our I just got like a weird pop-up. Sorry. I'm gonna go ahead and share the screen again so folks can see where to find you, Jessie. So first of all, if folks have any questions about anything Fave Studio Live, you can email me directly at dneald@primecp.com. These are all of the social media places where you can find Jessie. So she's on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, and X/Twitter. All of those links are also on her website. You can find the social media icons on her website. I had dropped some like various links in the chat for projects that were mentioned, like that carbon fiber wallet, the We Like Sewing cover, and the newsletter subscription link for Jessie's newsletter, twice monthly newsletter. And yeah, if you haven't already, definitely go to her website, iamsocrazy.com, and see some of her beautiful work. So Jessie, thank you so much for teaching for us today. Yeah, I'm not seeing any more questions come in. So I think.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for moderating and keeping an eye on my camera work.
Of course. It's fantastic to have you. I hope folks enjoy making these beautiful flowers, and hopefully we'll see people at future classes, and you guys see Jessie's projects on Fave Crafts and on her website and in We Like Sewing. So check her out in all the places.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun with those projects.
Very good. Oh, awesome. All right. Thank you again so much, Jessie, for teaching today, and have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody.
Yes, you too, everybody watching around the world. Have a good
Yes.
day.